So you've got the R3 and you're wondering if you should get the R5ii or the Canon R1. Let's try and find out which one you should consider for your wildlife photography. Hi everyone, this is Felix from Focused on Wildlife, and as you know, I've used the Canon R3 for many years, and then when the R5 Mark II came out, I also got this one to replace the first R5, and I've been very happy with both of them. But obviously, as a complete gear nerd, I was always curious about the specs and performance of the R1, and I wanted to see if I could test for myself to see if I did the right choice or not going for the R5 Mark II. Thanks to my good friend Max, and you can follow him here, a great sports photographer. He kindly lent me his R1, a second R1 to be fair. So he's even given me the privilege of unboxing his second precious camera. So without further ado, let's get into the contents of the box. Okay, so I'm sure you guys have a passion for unboxing, so we'll try not to milk it too much. Usual stuff, manuals, but here is the heart of the whole thing, the beast. So first impression, very, very similar to the R3, much more what I'm used to in terms of ergonomics and size, and I like to say these are adult cameras because you can actually grab them pretty comfortably. If I'm not mistaken, it uses the same batteries as the R3 and 1DX Mark III. So if you're already in that system, that's a plus. Let's see, yes. Mirrorless cameras tend to use a lot of battery, a lot of power, so the chunkier versions of the batteries are always welcome. So first impression, the viewfinder is absolutely massive, so I think that's going to be a big plus. Some say that the transition from OVF to EVF is a bit hard to swallow, but I can definitely tell that we're getting closer and closer to a true OVF experience, even with a screen. And that brings me to this guy, which seems to be the brainchild of the removable R3ii cup and the non-removable super high quality R5ii cup. So finally we've got a removable high quality eye cup, which I hope we'll see in the future iterations of Canon bodies. Looking through the body, as I said, very similar layout to the R3. So if you already use this or the 1D line, you'll be feeling right at home. But immediate impression, newly designed car door, which I can see now has a safety latch, so to avoid accidental opening in the field. In all honesty, I've never had any issues with the R5ii or R3, but any safety feature is a good feature, so well on Canon. And finally, a dual CF Express slot. And this is the major gripe, if you can call it a major gripe, that I've got with the R5ii, which is I have no use for an SD card slot. So hopefully this marks the end of the SD card slot in higher end flagship products in the Canon line going forward. Really quickly, really like the feel of the new texturing. It looks like it's not going to slip, even with sweaty hands in 37 plus London right now. I can see the familiar optical AF-on, which was a game changer on the R3, and again I was wishing we would see in the R5ii. The position of the switches are slightly different, but quite familiar to the R3, so I think if you are wondering if you can pick up the R1 from the R3 straight away, the answer is yes, you'll be right at home. There's only this one mysterious little new addition, which is this camera-looking device here. And I've heard from some trusted source that it might actually be a camera used for facial recognition. So we'll see what Canon has in store for future firmwares. From a connectivity standpoint, I think we have the exact same ports as the R3 with one major notable difference, which is finally an adult HDMI port. Cannot stand mini HDMIs, so this is a welcome addition. But this is probably what explains partly as well that the fact that the R1 is a bit chunkier than the R3. Other than that, everything's the same. Maybe the addition of a new on-off switch for the vertical grip doesn't really bother me. If I have it on all the time, I don't want to have to deal with this. I don't know why it's there, but if you use this, it's there for you. If you're a video shooter, you will welcome the addition of a front and back-facing tally light, so you're not going to have to run back to your camera to see if it was recording or not. And this mysterious, look like a strap long at the bottom. Not sure that's what it's for, but if that's your thing, here it is. Yeah, well thought through. As usual with Canon cameras, your fingers end up exactly where you want them to be. The buttons are within reach, easy to find. So looking forward to taking it out for a quick test. Okay, so we've been through the layout of the camera and just the first impression features, but what I'm really interested in is specifically the autofocus capabilities between different cameras. Obviously, the right way of trying something would be to have the camera with me for an extended period of time and on different conditions, different trips. Obviously, Maxime needs his camera soon, so I only have a couple of hours with it. And I thought the best way for me to have a good first impression of the features and performance is to try and set up something that I can do repeatedly. And so the way it's going to work is I'm going to have the 600, which is my main lens, mounted on the flow take here. And you'll be able to see how the camera is performing, looking at the screen, film with the iPhone. I need an animal. I couldn't find a willing wild animal to participate, so I have a special guest today. Bob, the fucking duck, which I'll put in different places in the garden, in the light, in the shade, behind branches or whatever. And I'm only going to be looking at speed of acquisition and stickiness in ever-increasing difficult lighting conditions. So that's it. I'm going to go and set it up and we'll see what kind of results we get. So first case scenario here, we've got Bob the duck in some tall grasses, and you want to see if it's able to latch on quickly. The first acquisition is quick if it goes for the head, the body, or the eye. So we'll see here, this is the R3. I've got a wide zone, and I'm going straight to the AF on. Here, no problem at all. The IAF did its job, and it's sort of losing it once in a while, but oh, here we go. It did a brilliant job at first, but now it's really interested in the lavender for some reason. So if this happens, I've got the spot focus, and I can bring it back to where I want to. And here, again, no problem grabbing the eye. So pretty decent performance. Some misses with the lavender, but all in all, that's pretty good. Now, one of the key things is sometimes you'll see with mirrorless cameras, it will latch onto the background and then it's nearly impossible to bring it back to the front. But here we can see that relatively quickly it finds it. So from a stills photography perspective, the R3 is definitely a very capable camera. Now, video is a different beast. So here it is, no problem at all finding the eye. I'm putting it into tracking. So here, interestingly, don't know if you can see, but it is tracking it, and I've seen this happen often, where it is definitely detecting the eye, and it's latched onto the eye, but it's not quite focused on it. So what I tend to do is then focus completely somewhere else, let's say here the background, and then bring it back to my subject in the hope that it finds it. And again, look, struggling to latch on to the eye. So from a video perspective, this is very, very difficult case scenario for the R3. So maybe if I try maybe change to a spot, might force it into looking into, no, even then, I can't quite get it to get away from the box head at the back. So in this case, if I was in the field, I would have to stop the AI servo and then manually force it into focus. So yeah, not a great performance here. Now back to still. This is an easy case scenario for the camera because most of the twigs are static. But what if you were in a sort of windy environment and you had lots of distracting movement in the scene? So we see here with some wind, no problem at all. The camera has no distraction, latched onto the eye. That's great performance. Again, back to the background, acquiring the subject, no problem. From a still perspective, this is spot on. So yeah, a bit disappointing on the video, but for what is a 3, 4, 5 years old camera, definitely great in the stills performance. So that's for the R3. I'm now going to switch to my other camera, the R5ii, and we'll see if it tells a similar story. Right, so now we have the R5ii, a sort of pocket camera. And once you use the R3 or 1DX or R1, it's a bit strange to hold such a small camera. But I'm not going to complain because I often handhold the 600, and having a camera which is basically half the other one is a welcome addition by the end of the day. So let's see how it performs. Same sort of settings, animal AF. I've got the same speed and subject tracking priorities as much as possible throughout the 3 cameras because there are some slight differences, but let's see how it goes. So here I'm completely defocused on the background, straight into the lavender, and boom, we've got no problem with the eye. Similar story to the R3, really sticky, and if it doesn't have the, oh, there we go. Here we go, it's now confused, it's on the lavender, so no problem. Back to the background, try again, boom, back on the eye. So fairly similar story to the R3. And if I was to sort of compare the R5ii to the R3, in my opinion, what Canon managed to do with the R5ii is bring the previous R5 up to speed with the R3 in terms of rolling shutter and autofocus performance. So I'm not surprised to see a fairly similar story in stills. However, the big difference, in my opinion, is the moment you switch to the video mode. So first of all, we have now a fairly... So now we have a proper, almost cinema camera interface with waveform and false color, and also the addition of C-Log 2, which allows to crunch so much more dynamic range into the log footage. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about the autofocus, so let's see how it works. Here I went for a very wide zone. This is how I usually shoot. So see, it's struggling if it's still locked onto the background, but within a few seconds, it finds it. So here, confused, it's on the beak. Let's see if we can get to, there we go. Now we are on the eye. So if I move around, hopefully it is quite sticky, and this is quite good. Now, that's the ideal scenario. Let's see if I go back to the background. Okay, back to the foreground. Boom, back onto the eye. So a significant improvement versus the R3, I have to say. And that's on the best case scenario. What about some windy conditions? Again, once it's on it, no problem. We'll see if we can lose it a bit. Come back onto the subject, struggling, there we go, we're back. So as you can see from a video standpoint, the R5ii is not miles ahead, but is significantly better than the R3, at least at sticking to its initial subject. For the fun of it, want to see how it handles having some distractions between me and the subject. So using a hose and maybe a stick, let's see if it is confused. Oh yeah, it's not liking that. That is tricky. So that would be interesting to see with the R1 if I can get it to overcome this. Because even with the spot, there we go, maybe the spot, it's trying. It's not bad, but I think I'm asking a lot to the camera here. So in these conditions, which You know, I often see when I go on my trips in Norway and it's blizzardy, you can't beat manual focus. Right, so this was for the R5ii, and there's only one camera left to test, which is the R1, and let's see how it goes. Last but not least, the R1, same setup, same dock, same everything. So here, focus on the background, get the dock really quick to acquire subject, quite sticky. Try again, focus in the foreground, back on the dock. So it really likes this sort of lavender twig, well it used to at least, but contrary to the R5 or R3, it seems to be more easy to convince to ignore that one and go back onto the main subject. I would say this is far more consistent versus the R5ii or R3. Now let's try the same with a bit of wind. No problem at all. Yeah. Okay, so what about video then? This is where the R3 was lacking a bit. But immediately we are on the eye, so I'm going to engage the eye tracking. Quite sticky, whatever I'm doing up and down, it seems to be latched on much more than the R5ii even. Okay, we've lost it here now, but it's back. Now if I focused on the background, let's see. Okay, and now I'm back here, and it's instant. So I think, from a static subject perspective, this is a clear improvement. So now keep in mind that the R1 is the first mirrorless camera in the Canon range to incorporate cross-type autofocus points. So maybe that is why we are seeing such a performance improvement. So as we saw earlier, the mist, rain, and other distractions really was proving to be a problem for the R5ii. Let's see if it's the same issue with the R1. So here I'm tracking. Yes, instantly. I think we're not quite there yet when it comes to autofocus miracles. But what I'm noticing is it's not losing it as much as the R5. It is pretty much in the vicinity of the head. And we are not seeing, okay, now we've lost it. Okay, back on here. It would be unfair to me to say that it's a similar performance to the R5ii. It is sticking much closer to where the subject is. That's quite impressive, actually. And just like that, we're back. Well, I think that's pretty conclusive, I'd say. So after this very scientific test, which camera to go for after the R3 or R5, I would say that I'm really happy with the R5ii. I was a R5 Mark I user and loved it. It was the first one to come out. It was a complete revolution, even compared to my 1DX3. I liked the autofocus performance. I liked the high resolution, which allowed me to print pretty big. And the R5ii has been game-changing compared to the R5 I in terms of performance. I'd say Canon managed to put it on par in terms of autofocus performance, if not better than the R3, but more importantly fixed all of the rolling shutter problems that we had in the R5 I. So I'm really happy with the R5ii, and I do not regret my choice. However, can I say that it is on par with the R1? I think that would be slightly unfair. My bias before this very, very short test had me inclined to say that this was a sports camera, sports dedicated camera, or a journalist camera, and not exactly a dedicated wildlife body. But it definitely has a slight edge in the stills department and a pretty significant improvement for autofocus performance in video. I think it all depends on how much you value this. Is it £2,000 better? I'm not sure what the difference in the new prices between the R1 and R5ii are at the moment, but I think it's ballpark £1,000 to £2,000. It's not for me. Now, if you're going to jump from the R3 to something else, and you do a lot of fast action wildlife, I think the R1 should be a consideration for you. What I would love to see in the future is a similar attention to detail that the Canon engineers have put in coming up with algorithms to predict the action for humans. Basketball or any type of ball game, the camera knows what's going to happen and predicts where the autofocus should be moving on. As wildlife photographers, we know if a bird is about to take off, if a feline is about to pounce, and if we had this sort of smart understanding in the camera for wildlife, this would be a game changer. So it's a great camera. It does wildlife amazingly, even though that's not what it's built for. But at the moment, I can't quite justify the higher price versus my R5ii. But we'll see what Canon comes up with the next iteration of the R1. Obviously, this is a very short test. It's on a static subject, which is not even real. It's not exactly challenging conditions. I can't really give you a definitive answer in less than 3 hours. I need to take one in the field, test it in difficult conditions, flying birds, animals going straight towards me at great speeds. It's going to take a while to get a proper judgment, but hopefully this quick test will give you some sort of an answer for us wildlife photographers as to which one to go for.